Today we are interviewing Professor Robert Hayes. The interview is being conducted in Marietta, Georgia. The interviewer is Jack W. Boone for the Marietta Golden K Kiwanis Club. The camera is an RCA Pro Edit video camera. Bob, for the record, what is your full name?
I am Robert William Hayes, Hays.
What is your date of birth?
10/17/25.
What is your current address?
I live on Trickham Road in Cobb County, Northeast Cobb.
Are you retired?
I'm retired as a professor from Southern Polytechnic State University, Southern Tech. I'm just recently retired from my consulting business as a private consultant.
Were you in the military during World War II?
Yes, indeed. I was in the military in the U.S. Navy from the 1st of July of 43 until the middle of September of 46, a total of 39 months.
What was the highest rank you attained?
I went from Apprentice Seaman to Lieutenant Junior grade. That's the Navy equivalent of a first lieutenant.
Were you married at the time of your service?
No, in fact, I was probably too young to be married. I was only 20 when I got out of service.
Tell us about the first assignment that you had when you went into service.
I was assigned as an apprentice seaman in the Navy's V-12 program, which was to train naval officers for primarily the amphibious forces.
Bob, I understand you served in the U.S. Navy during and right after World War II. Let's start by asking you to summarize your military service.
Jack, I guess the high point would have been my participation in the invasion of Iwo Jima, which occurred starting on February 19, 1945, in Iwo Jima and the Volcanoes Islands northeast of the Marianas, and which resulted in our taking that island with tremendous casualties in about 5 weeks' time.
So you were a civilian when the war started with Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941.
That's right.
How did civilian life differ before, during, and after World War II from civilian life, the civilian life we see today in 2004?
So different, Jack, it's hard to believe for those of us who predate World War II. For example, the population has grown tremendously. From the last decennial census before World War II in the 1940, we had 132 plus million people. In 2000, just 40 years, 60 years later, we had 281 million, a growth of 112% in just, well, really a couple of lifetimes. We changed in our racial, ethnic relationships, even changed in sex, because in the census of 1940, we had 66 million males, and the remainder of females, of course. In 2000, we had 65 million females. The males were being outnumbered by the females. We've changed in our entertainment practices. Most of us, we can recall the first TV set we had. We've changed in our cost of living. I worked for 10 cents and later 30 cents an hour when I was in college. And of course, there were correspondingly low prices. We've changed in our travel habits. Today, we think nothing of getting on a jet. Jack, I've hitchhiked to New York and other places. And in the service, I hitchhiked on airplanes. The role of government has changed dramatically. We had 2 million federal employees, 2.7 million federal employees just in the most recent census. Our technical innovations have changed unbelievably. For example, this is a slide rule, and of course, Jack, I'm sure you're familiar with this. This until about the 1960s was a standard instrument of rapid calculation. Now, we've got this so cheap that we can distribute as door prizes, or even more so, the electronic computer, which seemingly everybody has. We've gone technical gadgetry and all sorts of things around the home and at work. We've expanded our higher education system, and more to the point, in some of our cases, we've gotten fatter too. Obesity is a serious problem. Of course, the thing that changed everything so dramatically was the Japanese attack on December 7th. At the time, I had just turned 16. 16 million of us served in World War II. During World War II, we had rationing of gasoline, rationing of some foodstuffs, and even some rationing of some clothes. But there was a national spirit that I haven't seen anywhere since. Our production shifted for the war effort from making cars to no making cars. In the workforce, we welcomed Road to the Riveter because so many of the males were in service. And incidentally, romance accelerated with many wartime marriages. Attitudes, go ahead, Jackson.
Many folks our age have noticed that civilian attitudes toward men in uniform, when you were a sailor, that a young naval officer, was that different from the civilian attitude toward servicemen today?
Unfortunately so. In World War II, the serviceman, servicewoman were at the top of the heap, respected by everybody. And for example, people would pick you up when you tried to hitchhike.
What differences do you see now that than what you saw during the years?
Respect for the military has slipped downhill. Started with the Korean War, reached the bottom in Vietnam. Hopefully it's beginning to come back because fundamentally we are dependent upon the professional military to protect the United States. And above all, the purpose of the military is to kill the enemy or threaten to do so. And we're losing that sense of spirit.
I note you referred to servicemen, that is, males. Today, all U.S. Armed Forces have women serving in almost all situations, from private to general, or from seaman to admiral. How do you feel about that change?
It depends on what sort of duty they're assigned to, Jack. I have the highest regard for the women who serve in uniform, but I don't believe they should be in combat. No, I do not believe that women should see combat. And I'll tell you for a very practical reason why. The little ship that I served on for 2 years had a total officer's space of about, I'd say 15 feet square. And we had 5 of us living in that space. Now, how are you going to accommodate 2 sexes in that kind of space? It requires duplication of logistics, and frankly, I just think it's a very, very bad idea. Now, while I would say welcome to the service ladies, to the service women who serve stateside or abroad, but not in combat. May I get back on the soapbox just one more thing? I think we made a very bad mistake in this country, and I'll say it plainly, because the politicians haven't got the guts to say it. We made a mistake, a bad mistake, in stopping the draft.
How have our economic, social, and legal situations changed, not in fancy terms like economists or lawyers or sociologists, but in simple terms?
Well, I can't just ignore the welcoming of many women in top positions like Hewlett-Packard, but the relationships between the sexes have changed. I think a loss of certain courtliness. Maybe I'm sounding like just an old fudgy at that, but I think we have lost a sense of politeness in many cases. We have a more blatant frankness of expression across the whole culture in all respects. I think we've lost something too in our dealing with each other. Now we have to exercise more restraint and more caution in our dealings, reliance on written contracts, dependence on laws to protect us. The handshake is no longer considered good enough. And frankly, Jack, I think we've lost a lot of the spirit of patriotism. I know we have our faults, but why do we drag our government into the dirt? Why are we made to seem dim-witted or at best old-fashioned? Our flag is mistreated. We have a tolerance of disrespect. Excuse me. We have bad taste, improper conduct, accepted as indicators of our rights, altogether forgetting that with rights must come responsibilities. All right, I'm off my soapbox. What's your next question?
All right, technology in every phase of society, but especially in the military, has changed the way things happen and the happenings themselves. Could you comment on the technological changes and with some examples?
Certainly I will. And these examples, by the way, some of them will be bad examples, but so be it. Take probably the most outstanding, in my view, is the development of the Global Positioning Satellite System, the GPS. With a little handheld GPS, I can tell the location of my boat within typically 15 or at most say 25 feet. In World War II, when I was a navigator, we were navigating by a device called the sextant, which is not much of an improvement over this. This particular gadget is called an astrolabe, and this is what got Columbus to America. It worked by holding it up like this and letting gravity establish a synthetic horizon. And then you moved a little gadget here that told the elevation of a star. That's the way Columbus did it. And I used something very similar to this, a sextant, in finding our position of our ship in World War II and thereafter. I was very good if I could get within half a mile by celestial navigation. Now, with the little GPS system, a handheld gadget that costs about $125 at bottom price will tell me the answer in, at most, 15 seconds of where we are. Whereas with a navigator having to work out the celestial navigation star sites, it would take me every morning and every night about an hour. Our computers are everywhere. Offices, homes, hotel rooms across the country. Television is certainly an unmixed blessing, but it's everywhere too. We all remember the first TV set we had. We have prepackaged foodstuffs, medical devices and techniques so that we can put in artificial limbs, or we can trade organ transplants and put in hearts. Our airplanes have increased from a speed of typically, and I remember the first plane ride I ever had in the 1930s, and a plane made, I think, around 100 miles an hour. And now standard speeds are running 550, 600 miles an hour. Radar, xerography has had a tremendous effect with officers able to make copies instantly. The harnessing of atomic and nuclear power has made a tremendous difference too. So those are just some of the changes. And I say, and I will comment more about this in just a minute, they also are mixed blessings. Go ahead, Jack.
Bob, some philosopher observed that the more things change, the more they remain the same. How do you react to this principle?
Well, I think that human nature seems to change very little. We all live in egocentric worlds. That is, the world is around me. Think of this, Jack. The most common pronoun in the English language is the pronoun I. It is, I think, the 5th or 6th most often used word in the English language. You is way down about 12 ranks lower. Everybody is viewing the world, and how will this affect me? How will it change my paycheck or my happiness? Our gadgets and our use of them have changed radically, and still, far too few of us appreciate or even understand excuse me, our constitutional republic of the United States. We make our mistakes, but we have here a condition of let the truth win out, and that's terribly important. We're still myopic as persons, as a species. This is what I call the Garden of Eden fallacy. That is, Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they lost Eden as a result. With every result we have, with every advancement we have, the knowledge seems to bring problems. This is a Shakespearean concept of the Shakespearean tragedies, but it seems to be true. If it sounds good, we adopt it, and then it causes us problems.
Bob, to put you on the spot a little bit, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the way the United States and maybe all of what we call people kind is heading?
I am very pessimistic, Jack. I wish it could be otherwise, for this reason. The barbarians are always at the gates. We have prevailed thus far. We defeated even Hitler, who was certainly a quintessential, efficient operator as a dictator. I think it will become ever more difficult to defeat a person who gains dictatorial control, because he will have or she will have at disposal the tremendous communication and organization systems of this country. I can almost plead, God help the United States.
Bob, let me say that I want to thank you for serving your country as all the people of the United States do.